Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where I give you my off the cuff and unrehearsed thoughts on data philosophy and this week marketing. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? And if you serve an ad to somebody who is about to purchase anyway, does that count as attribution? Incrementality says no. Incrementality is the true lift or impact that a marketing activity has had on a desired outcome. So, signups, leads, sales. And it's important because it separates out causation. So, the ad actually caused somebody to convert from correlation. The ad appeared alongside the conversion, helping marketers to make smarter data driven decisions about their activity. I feel like a lot of managers really would like a sum where if I spend £100 on marketing, I know I'm going to get 14 sales from that £100. And if I spend 200, therefore I should get 28. But sadly, things do not scale in this fashion and it can become very annoying and confusing. And incrementality is definitely something that can be difficult for people to wrap their heads around. Quite often, when I talk about advertising, I'm talking about how people need to stop focusing on conversions, so the amount of people that have come through, and start focusing on the quality of those conversions. So, if you get 100 people that sign up and they spend £1 each, that's £100. If you get 50 people who sign up and they spend £3, then you've actually made more money from 50 people than you have from 100. And that's where you should focus your efforts around lifetime value. But the next stage of complexity, of maturity, I guess, when it comes to data driven marketing is thinking about incrementality, especially if you're spending an amount of money. Um, and there's two things that you need to consider here. So one is incrementality and TAM. So TAM is total addressable market. And I've talked a few times about how total addressable market is normally a little bit smaller than you would imagine. Not everybody goes broad with their marketing. I think most people are looking to find niches that are of those LTV people. And so their TAM in terms of people who have ad blocker not on and they can be served ads and all this kind of stuff is probably smaller than they realize. And as you can imagine, if you are targeting an area and there's 1,000 people in those area, as you saturate that market, as those 1,000 people see your adverts, your incrementality will drop. TAM sort of sets a hard ceiling on that potential incremental gain. So the only way to then increase your uh, incrementality is then to increase your TAM. So to look at new markets, to open it up to a wider audience, all of that kind of thing. Because otherwise, you will always face the law of diminishing returns. So every pound that you spend on a saturated audience yields less and less results as those 1,000 people see your ads more and more. You will identify the people who are going to convert and the people who are not going to convert over time. So, as marketers, what can we see happen when we hit this sort of incrementality ceiling? Well, CPA rises without LTV rising. So, your cost is going up, but the LTV isn't going up. Incremental conversions will plateau. So, you'll see flat lines on there. You're spending the same amount of money, but you're not getting any more conversion. But interestingly, attribution will still look good, but business KPIs won't. So you'll still look like your advert is working, but you're not actually making more money as a business because of that. And what are your options when you see these sort of things? Well, you could shift your budget to sort of top of funnel or brand led efforts at that point to try and get more people in and understanding what your brand does, as opposed to, I think everybody is always guilty of focusing on this bottom of funnel stuff. Obviously, you then have to think about exploring new channels, new audiences, expanding, uh, innovate with your creative or your value proposition to try and find a new message that will get through to people. Focus on customer experience, LTV, expansion. If you can find those high value customers, obviously that makes more sense without having to increase your audience. And then, just improve your measurement sophistication to uncover that hidden incrementality. How do you do that from a data point of view? Well, it's normally controlled experiments. So this could be A/B tests, it could be geolift tests, ghost ads, could be holdout groups. So comparing exposed versus unexposed audiences. There are incrementality testing platforms like Measured, Google Conversion Lift, Meta has Lift Studies. Um, Randomization and control in isolating true lift is really important. So always have a control group, try out those new messages and see where you get to with those. Qualitative signs or sort of performance flatlining despite the spend increasing. And retargeting campaigns will show greater attribution, but low true lift, I guess, because you're just serving people to those people who are already about to convert. So you're retargeting, although it looks more effective, it's not really true at that point. A few real life examples for you. So in 2019, Uber discovered that a significant portion of its advertising spend was not driving incremental value by cutting two-thirds of its ad spends, apparently approximately $100 million. The company observed no negative impact on user acquisition. I think I've talked about this example before. This finding suggested that many of the ads were merely capturing users that would have converted organically, highlighting the pitfalls of relying solely on last click attribution models. Yes, anybody who uses last click attribution models is more likely to face problems with incrementality. Airbnb had a similar sort of use case. It paused its performance marketing efforts during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Remarkably, the company found that traffic levels returned to 95% of their previous levels without any marketing spend, indicating that a substantial portion of their paid advertising was not generating incremental demand. So all those people would have converted anyway. Now, it's important to bear in mind that these things kind of go hand in hand. So it's certainly not true that you will run an ad for a small amount of time and that you will hit this incremental barrier. Airbnb and Uber, they're spending hundreds of millions of pounds. And so they are hitting that wall in terms of their audiences. And then afterwards, they can turn those things off because they've already done all the hard work and spent all of the money over a long period of time. It's this sort of more Ver effect where the more you see something, the more you will judge it to be good because more people are talking about it. The more that you see something, the more likely you are to remember it, the more likely you are to buy from it, which is why consistency is so important in marketing. It's why um, getting things out on a regular basis is one of the most important fundamental things about marketing. And that means that later on, while you might need to boost these things with spend to begin with in order to get in front of people, later on you can then lower those things with a lower risk. But that is not true of people who are spending, hundreds on their marketing. You're not hitting your TAM at all. A couple of things that you can also do that if you can't randomize or if you're struggling with your control group, you could do propensity score matching. So you use historical data to model the likelihood of a user seeing an ad. So you create this propensity score. Um, Propensity scores are how closely somebody matches somebody that's already existing. It's not like predicting the future, although that's what it's sort of sold as. If I have a propensity score of LTV, I am matching myself to how closely I matched to other people who did the same activities and had the same purchasing as myself. So you create this propensity score of likelihood of a user seeing an ad, difficult thing to do, based on observable traits. And then you match users who saw the ad with similar users who didn't. So with the same propensity, and then you compare those conversion rates there. You could also use GeoLift using matched pairs of similar regions. So if you have two markets that historically they behaved sort of similarly, maybe they're similar size or they just have the same performance levels in those markets. You run marketing in one and not the other, and then you compare differences, ideally adjusting with a synthetic control. Testing is always really important in marketing. And I always talk about how the simplest way of telling if something is working is to switch it off, as we saw there with Uber and Airbnb. They switched things off, and it turned out that they didn't need to spend those money. But it's a very scary thing to do on a practical level. You want to make sure that you're getting your customers in, and so I think people are always reluctant to do it. But if you can try those things in a small way, you'll figure out incrementality. Just another note on last click and why it's bad, sort of drives as cannibalization. So A study by 39 Celsius demonstrated that running Google ads for branded search terms can cannibalize organic traffic. So, this is where people run ads on their own websites and their own search terms typically, which I'm always think is a bit of a waste of money. But obviously, the reason that people do that is because their competitors are above them, and so they want to make sure that they're showing up first and that they're not losing traffic to competitors. But when ads were paused, organic branded clicks increased by 245%, and the click through rate improved by 174%. This shift indicated that the paid ads were capturing users who would have clicked on organic results, leading to an unnecessary ad spend without incremental benefits. So I understand the reason that people do that, but it's been proven that it's not really true. Research highlighted by Marketing Week revealed that certain affiliate marketing practices, such as voucher code sites, can lead to cannibalization. For instance, Orange found that one type of affiliate had a cannibalization rate of 25%, meaning that a quarter of sales attributed to these affiliates would have occurred without their involvement. So it's always good to look at your different channels and think about whether or not those things would have happened anyway. There is a philosophical argument here of if I run an ad and somebody clicks on it, and yes, maybe they would have converted anyway, and so I'm wasting my money to a sense. But do I really care as long as I'm getting the sale? That only rings true where you'll know your LTV and you know that hey, that click is going to cost me £2 and they're going to spend 2,000. In which case, okay, maybe I don't care. I don't need to spend the time, effort, and money to figure out incrementality. But again, if your budget is high and you really care about these things and you're doing things in a proper way and you're spending millions of pounds on advertising, then of course incrementality is really important. It's also very, very difficult to figure out the true impact of anything. I personally have seen somebody watch a video that I have created, stood behind them when it's popped up. They've gone, "Oh, that's interesting." I've seen them go onto the website, make a purchase, and then I sort of, they didn't realize. I've said, "Oh, well, where did you hear about this brand?" And they literally told me, "Oh, yeah, somebody told me about this." I was like, "No, they didn't. I just saw you watch my video." So it's really difficult to know for certain why somebody does something unless you're watching them all the time, which is what I think all marketers secretly wish we could do. But incrementality makes it difficult for us to judge the effectiveness of marketing campaigns upfront, of advertising campaigns upfront. So an interesting thing the other day where somebody was saying that the problem with attribution and with ads in general is that it sort of steers you towards retargeting and it makes you think that your audience is older because younger people are less likely to click on ads and all this kind of stuff. And my answer to that and thinking about incrementality and if things are working is simply that you don't hang your entire business around ads. It's a useful platform. People make money off of ads. The idea that, oh, we can't measure it perfectly and so it's not worth doing is absolute bullshit to me. I think there's plenty of use cases that say ads do work for people. And yes, these days you have to waste more money to get to the right people. Um, but you can still find those people and you can still make a lot of money and a lot of return on ads. And incrementality is the thing that you need to be aware of once you've got past the stage where you are optimizing your ads to lifetime value, when you're spending a larger amount of money over a longer period of time, and maybe you're starting to hit your total addressable market. These have been my thoughts for the week. Let me know how you handle incrementality below. Thanks for watching as ever.